I'll introduce myself. I'm
Oh,
Esther
sorry.
Kleiman. No,
This
it's
is
okay.
Esther Kleiman. She runs
I can-
Bonei Olam. Yes.
I don't run Bonei Olam. I work with a lot of incredible people who run Bonei Olam. And I can attest that I work with Raquel and Nechama and this incredible community. You might not be involved on a daily basis on the medical aspect, but by your donations, when they when they have fundraisers, and when you give, that's the way that you're involved. So I can't say that it's only the incredible women who run it on a daily basis in the organization, but it's everyone in this community who shows up when they can and how they can. They asked me to come share today some thoughts on how to support a couple who is struggling with infertility. And I think my first disclaimer that I could always share with everybody is there's no one size fits all answer. Every couple, every person, every woman struggling is going to be different. There's so many different facets that a couple might be struggling with. I actually worked with a woman who I work very closely with on a daily basis. And she was giving a speech one time and she's like, let's do this once and for all. Let's come up with top 10 tips that we could tell everybody that can help a couple. So we wrote it up and I was like, that's the easiest way to share with people how you can be more sensitive to someone else struggling. So I'm going to read it because it's the easiest way for me to share it. I also I think that organizations like Bonei Olam, and I take fault, I say we take fault in this, we a lot of times paint a very dark picture for a couple that's struggling. And it is a very difficult, hard journey. But I think the first thing that you have to remember about this beautiful couple is that they are a successful, beautiful couple. And their journey and struggle with infertility shouldn't be their defining factor. And that's how you, by noticing and acknowledging that and not treating them like they are different because of their situation, is so, so important. They don't want to be singled out for their journey. Trust me, it's not a secret. Everybody knows they don't have children. That's not something they can hide. What they choose to hide, they can choose to hide, and they're doing that for their own, really sometimes sanity more than anything else. But what they choose to share and what they choose not to share, it's not because it's anything personal against you. They don't want to hurt you, and that's why they're choosing not to share with you. They're choosing not to share is because it's their very, very personal life. And everyone has personal things that are personal to them that they don't want to share. And it's painful, extremely painful. And not having that extra burden of having to answer to their sisters, their mothers, their cousins, their friends of what they're going through is really important. So I'm going to go through the list of 10. And like I'll say in advance, nothing is clear cut. And if you feel that something is different for this couple, be sensitive, ask in a kind way, but make sure that if the answer is no and they ask you and they say, I'm not comfortable sharing or talking, don't push. That's I think the first thing. So she, when we wrote this up, she's like, this is the top 10, but in no specific order. Treat us like you would anyone else. We know you don't know the depths of this challenge. We know you can't fix it, and we don't expect you to. We value you and your friendship. So take the time to value us. Number 2, we've most likely heard of that miracle segula. If you think it's a zechus and it could help, please do it. And no need to share it with us. That's like a lot of times we think we're helping by, did you hear about this, Rabbi? Did you hear about this option? You want to join this challah? You can always do it for them, and you don't even have to tell them about it. Trust me, God knows, and it will get hopefully to the right address, the merit where it needs to go. Number 3, rather than assuming what someone would like or appreciate, you can always give options. I can make you supper, take you out to coffee, go on a walk with you, send something a nice flowers. What would you prefer? Sometimes people have an allergy and they can't have that in the house. They can't have flowers or something like that. So it's never a fault to ask how you can help. When showing you care, it's best to send open-ended messages that don't need responses. Rather than asking, how are you? You can send a message like thinking of you. This makes it not uncomfortable for them to have to feel the need to respond. They could respond with a heart back, and then the conversation could be over. And that way, everybody feels comfortable, the person who sent the message and the person who got the message. Number 5, most people choose a confidant that is not a relative. Family members, please understand and don't take that personally. This is so crucial. I can't tell you. And so many times, even one of the couple would love to be able to tell a family member, but the husband or the wife might not feel comfortable with someone else in the family knowing this very private issue that they're dealing with. So out of respect for their spouse, they might not be telling it to your family. So help them in the way they need help. And that's by not pushing them to say where they don't feel comfortable sharing. Number 6, there's more to someone than their fertility challenge. Find common goals with us that centers around shared interests and goals. And I think that most importantly at, I would say, simchas and times of joy in families and holidays when people are getting together, take the time to find a common conversation ground that you can have with these women. A lot of everyone's lives are centered around, thank God, families and kids and their schools and the challenges of raising your own kids. But take the time. Usually these people are in school. They're very successful in their jobs. There's something as women that you can always talk to another woman about. So take that time and find that common ground for conversation and have it so that she's not standing alone while everyone else is discussing how difficult bedtime was. Don't assume we have sleepless nights and busy days and not enough time. Just because we don't have kids in the house, that doesn't mean that we have time and the availability to show up everywhere, meaning when it comes to family events or for family members. Number 8, please don't pry. If you are not part of our medical team, do not ask any questions. Please don't offer advice. I think that we all mean good. It never comes from a place of bad. And you know what? Most people take it that way. No one is here to hurt another person, ever. And sometimes we hear that someone was successful with a specific doctor or a specific method or a specific way. So you think, okay, I'm going to share that with this person because they probably didn't hear about it. But no, there are incredible organizations like Bonei Olam who are holding their hand. And if there is a cutting edge technology that could help them, they've tried it or they're going to be trying it. It's so painful when it comes from family members and friends. Even though you mean well, it ends up being hurtful. Knowing that not always does treatment work. I think that people are in treatment and we expect that. I remember a long time ago, someone had sponsored a treatment of another couple. And a few months later, they were asking like, how far along is she? And I remember responding to that. I was like, unfortunately, that treatment didn't work. We don't remember that just because they tried and they might have done the most possible, that if God decided it's not time yet, no matter how much money, no matter how much effort, no matter how much they are going to put into this, it might not always work. So if they did share that they went through treatment for some reason and they felt comfortable sharing with it, don't assume that it worked. Or if they did go through treatment and they didn't share, then it possibly, the reason they're still going through it is obviously because it didn't work. And I think that this is also like the number 10 that she wrote and that we wrote when we wrote it together. She said, wish us well, offer compassion, but don't make promises. People feel very, very pained by the fact that other people will say, I promise you, you too will have a child one day. We can daven, we can pray, and as a community, we can come together, we can learn, we can offer support. But the promises are up to God. We can make promises on how to better our own lives in their merit. But at the end of the day, it's in God's hands to grant this couple with a child. So I say to this community, and I want to thank everybody here for showing up today, for learning on how, by the fact that you showed up today shows that you care to learn how to support them. And that's really special, so thank you. And if, like Nechama said, if there's anybody that you do feel that can benefit from help, what's the most sensitive way to say? I say in general, communicating through text is a very nice way to communicate with people because it doesn't give them that need to have to answer on the spot. They can see your message, respond when they feel comfortable and how they feel comfortable, and also make sure that if you do send a message, if you could send it with an opportunity for them to not have to respond. People say, how do I tell them to reach out? First of all, most people know about Bonei Olam, thank God. You probably don't have to tell them to reach out. But when telling people about things, give it in a way of, you don't have to respond to this message is how you end your own message. That's so powerful to them to say they care about me, they're thinking about me, but they're also not expecting me to respond. And I think that that's a very strong and like a powerful point for women struggling. And we use the word women and when we're talking with women, but this is always a couple's journey. And it includes the sons, the husbands, the fathers, the nephews, the cousins of yours that aren't the males. and some will feel comfortable sharing and some won't, and not forgetting about them too. A lot of women remember to support their, their female friends in it, but a lot of times the men struggle alone because it is extremely private. For the men, they take it at even, I feel like, more in like stronger levels of privacy than the women take it. And not forgetting about the males in the picture and making sure to support them as much as possible. Well, we're here as an organization. God willing, I always say we should not be here. With the coming of Mashiach and Emir Hashem, everybody's wishes will be fulfilled.
Okay, so let's get cracking. First of all, I'd like to open up with the words of gratitude to the hosts for today, to Elaine and Saul Casson. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. And we also want to say Hazaku Baruch to the Mansour power couple. Hazaku Baruch also for encouraging me and pushing me to come to Brooklyn more than I do. It's a very big problem to come for me to Brooklyn. My people get very jealous when I leave.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate your appreciation. And you appreciate my, okay, whatever. But we have very few rabbis in Manhattan. It's not like in Brooklyn where Baruch Hashem you have so many. So there's a lot to do. So it's not often that I get to come, but when I do get to come, there's always a very special siyata d'shmaya that it's for a really good cause and it's for something very, very special. So I'm honored to be here today, Baruch Hashem, for such an incredible organization as Bonei Olam. And Bonei Olam is something that we're relatively new with in our community in terms of having our own division and having our own access points. And not everything is done exactly the same because us Syrians, we don't know how to leave well enough alone, right? Someone is doing amazing things. We're like, we could do it better. We'll bring it here. We're going to change all the rules. We're going to do it our way. I think Syrians, that's how they are. So Baruch Hashem, we tweak, we do as much as we can. We raise more money. We do as much. It's unbelievable. But what a great partnership it is between our community and Bonei Olam in bringing babies into this world. I had an idea. It was a terrible idea. It was a great idea, but it was a terrible idea. You know what the idea was? The idea was when they killed 1,400 people, I thought maybe we could raise enough money to get 1,400 babies born. Isn't that a great idea? And then I did the math. That's about 1.4. No, I think it's much more than that.
I would assume so. It depends on each.
Depends on each case, right? Yeah, so you can't estimate.
We had a couple that I think it cost us in 1 year $450,000. Wow.
So we were estimating.
So you can't.
You're estimating huge.
And then you have other people that don't have to pay anything.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. And you don't realize also, so many of us that never needed Bonei Olam, you don't realize how lucky you are until you come to one of these.
That's true.
And you realize like, wow, every one of them was this and that and this much money and that much drugs and side effects and this and that. And I just had kids. It's an amazing thing. So today, they asked me to come to speak about, not necessarily only about Bonei Olam, but to give a shiur. That was my instructions.
Yes.
To give a class, to learn some Torah together. It should be a zechut, and also maybe kind of peripherally be connected to what is a Bonei Olam. So I want to share with you something that I think is really powerful, something that I've been thinking a lot about this week. And you'll see where it plugs in and how it plugs in to what we're doing here today. Our rabbis tell us that the moment Vayigash Yehudah, that Yehudah approached Yosef, was an incredible moment. It was a moment which was filled with drama, filled with energy, filled with excitement, filled with passion. So much so that our rabbis tell us that what was this approach of Yehudah? It was like the approach of a lion coming in to tear up its prey. Okay, Yehudah we know is always compared to a lion in the Be'achot of Yaakov, in the Be'achot in the end of the Torah. Gur Aryeh Yehudah, that's his power. He's tremendously strong. He's filled with Gevurah. And Yosef we know as well is also powerful, but in a different way. Now I want to take a look at this moment. This awoke lion, not woke. That's something very different when you deal with that in other classes. But this lion which has been awakened, called Yehudah. Vayigash Yehudah. That's how Yehudah approaches, with this energy, with this strength. And I want to share with you first a very strange midrash. The midrash tells us that Yehudah's strength was so great, that he had he had hair on his chest that would stand up when he was angry, and it would tear through his clothing. And the Midrash tells us that he was wearing 5 layers of clothing, and this hair on his chest tore through all 5 elements of clothing. Now, that seems to me to be a very strange Midrash. I don't kind of, right out of the gate, that's a really weird thing to be telling me. And do I need to know that? Just tell me that he was strong. And what did it look like when he was strong? I don't know. Maybe he sweat. It doesn't say. And the smell of his sweat smelled like, well, do I need to know this? It must be the Midrash is coming to teach us something incredible about Yehudah when it tells us this idea that it tears through his clothing. So I really, if I can, I'd like to read you the words of the Pesukim, because whenever I teach Torah, I want you to know that it's not coming from me. I'm not making this up. This is authentic. It comes from the Pesukim itself, from the teachings of our rabbis itself. And then when it departs and enters from the Torah, from the Midrash, from the Gemara into your life, all of a sudden, it's on your Thursday afternoon. It's what you're dealing with your mother-in-law or father-in-law or brother or sister, and it comes to life. That's how you know that the Torah's wisdom is manifesting in your life, and you're touching something which is ancient, even more ancient than the world. There's something very special when you feel that flowing from the higher worlds through our world into your veins. So I want to quote to you the Pesukim. Pasuk says as follows, Yomer Yehudah, and Yehudah comes ready. This is the end of last week's parasha. Mano mala adoni, what should I say to my master? Mane daber, mane tztadak. How could I speak? How could I justify what happened? You found your gavia, someone stole your cup. Ha'elokim matzah et avon avdecha, right? Hashem found our avera. Hinenu aradim la'adoni, we're going to be servants to you. Gam anachnu gam asher nimtza gavia biado. Me, Benjamin, all the brothers, we're all going to be slaves to you. Yosef tells him, what are you talking about? No, only the guy that did the sin, he's the one that should be in prison. Everyone else should go free. That's how we ended last week's parasha, right in the middle of the conversation. And then we read, Vayigash Yehudah. Yehudah hears that Yosef doesn't want to take his sacrifice. He approaches the bench. Vayigash Yehudah, our rabbis tell us, he had his hand on his sword. And one of the things that caused Yehudah to be so emotional was he felt that he could not draw his sword out. Something was happening. He couldn't pull it. It wasn't coming out like the sword in the stone. Vayigash elav Yehudah vayomer. By the way, they stole that from Moshe and the Mateh. The story of the sword and the stone, the fairy tale where you can't pull the sword out, and the one that does, that's the sign that he's the king. That's from Moshe Rabbeinu, where the staff was stuck in the rock, it couldn't be pulled out. And all the years no one could pull it out till Moshe comes and yanks it out. Okay. Vayigash elav Yehudah. Yehudah approaches, Vayomer bi Adoni, listen, my master. Yidaberna avdecha b'dava. I need to speak in your ears. I need to tell you something. Don't be upset with me. By the way, every single time someone says, what do you know for sure? Exactly. There's never a time when that works out well, right? It's like, listen, I don't want you to be upset, right? But you look amazing. No one has ever said that, right? Because why would you? Okay. So he says, I don't want you to be upset. Lo yichar abdecha be'abdecha ki kamocha kefaro. You're like Paro. The commentators ask, why would Yosef be upset about the fact that he was being compared to the king? That's pretty high praise. And Chachamim explained that Yehudah was saying to Yosef, Ki kamocha kefaro, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to kill him. But don't be upset about that. What? How could he not be upset about that? Ki kamocha kefaro. Finally, the last bit that I want to share with you before we dive in over here. V'haya kiroto, I want you to understand, my father is so close with this child that if he sees that we did not bring back Benjamin, v'haya kiroto, ki en hanar, v'amet, he's going to die immediately. That's how close they are. V'horidu avdecha et tzevat avdecha avinu bi'agon shoah. You're going to cause my father to have such pain, he's going to die from the pain. And I promised my father that I would bring him back. And if I do not bring him back, I will have sinned to my father all the days. Our rabbis say, Kol hayamim, what does it mean all the days? What, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? What does that mean? All the days. Sorry?
For the rest of his life.
The rest of his life. That's what you'd think. What did you say? Someone said something over here.
No, I said the rest of his life.
The rest of his life. Good. You might remember these words from somewhere else. One of the most beautiful things about studying Torah is when we're able to break the myopia and look at Torah from a wider perspective. So the more you know Torah globally, the more you know Torah locally. You've heard these words before. Ko yemei chayecha hayamim, ko yemei chayecha halelot. Then the Haggadah ends. Yemei chayecha haolam hazeh, ko yemei chayecha lavi imot Mashiach. Sorry, everyone's now thinking about what they have to clean for Pesach. But, or which Pesach program. I don't know, whichever way you go, you're not here anymore. Okay. Kol yemecha, kol hayamim means, Yehudah said, I will sin to you forever and ever. I'll be punished for not bringing back Binyamin, not only in this world, but also in the next. You want to hear something crazy? Our rabbis tell us that when the Jewish people went from Mitzrayim, not only did they take Yosef's bones with them, who else did they take with them? They took the bones of all the Shvatim. They unearthed every one of the Shvatim. And Chazal tell us that when they were carrying the casket of Yehudah, they could hear the bones rattling in the kever, in his casket. Why? Because when a tzaddik says words out of his mouth, whatever he says comes true. Tzaddik gozer. If a tzaddik says a kilala, afilu al tenai, even if it's on condition, mitkayim, it comes true. Yehudah said, if I don't bring him back, I will have sinned for you. I should be punished, not just now, but in the world to come. So much so that his bones could not find rest even after he died. And his bones are shaking in the casket. So we're dealing with some very important things here. Yehudah's like, look, I have to bring this kid home. You know what? I have a great idea. You don't want them to be servants? I'll be a servant. Take me instead. I'm a much better person. Let him go with everybody else. I'll stay. I'll be the best servant you ever had. I'll clean the windows. I'll be the chadam. I don't know what is a male chadam mean? Chadam? Is that a thing? I don't know. There's no such word. Okay, fine. Either way, Yehudah says, I'm much better than him at anything. Remember that song, Anything He Can Do, I Can Do Better? That's what Yehudah is singing right now. Okay. So we find Yehudah is giving this whole argument, very persuasive. Now, I want to read to you a midrash, because when you think of a lion, I don't know, has anyone here ever been to South Africa? Anyone here ever gone on safari? You done it? By the way, amazing. You get to hear some of the dumbest questions in your life when you're on safari. Someone asked what time the lions come out. That was a great one. Right? And the guy is like trying to explain to him that there's not a schedule. You're actually in the wild now. They come out when they're hungry, whenever they want, right? You may see something, you may see nothing. But if you've ever seen a lion, you'll know what does a lion look like. Everyone's imagination of a lion is, right? That's what you think of a lion. You know what a lion really looks like? Sleeping the whole day. The whole day. He does nothing. He has children and he goes to war. That's what a lion does. Everything else, his wife is making him a sandwich. I'm not joking. Even the female lionesses, they do the hunting. So the lion just sits there. He does nothing. 90% of the time, what is a lion doing? Sleeping. It's wild to know that. But when a lion needs to rise, he rises like no one else. He becomes a king because in the moment that he needs to rise and show gvura, he's capable of doing so. I want to read to you something that is unbelievable. And I want to read this to you because I think one of the biggest challenges that we face in Judaism is that people don't really understand Torah. And Torah is the most wonderful thing. It's the most beautiful thing. It's the most exciting thing. But people mistakenly assume that Torah applies to others and other times in other locations. When we're learning about Yaakov, we're learning about someone from a long time ago. All of this is relevant right here and right now. And I want to show this to you in the words of the Midrash. The Midrash says, what happens when Yehudah steps forward? Amru malachei hasharet. The angels in the heaven said, Zeh lazeh, Bonei lemata. Let's go down to the earth. V'nir'eh shor ve'arim mitnagchim ze im ze. Let's go down and watch this. A lion and an ox are fighting one with another. In the world, normally, an ox sees a lion, runs away. But look, the two of them are fighting one another. Let's go watch and eat popcorn. I don't know what the angels would have done, but they were going to go watch. And listen to these last words. V'hakin'ah benehem. And the jealousy between these two powers, the lion and the ox, between Yehudah and Yosef, is going to exist. That jealousy will exist ad sheba Mashiach, until Mashiach comes. What does that mean? Yehudah doesn't even live until Mashiach comes. Neither does Yosef, for that matter. So what does it mean that this jealousy is going to outlive them? It's going to last till the coming of the Mashiach. Now, this is what I meant when I said to you earlier that the more you know, the more you understand. You might have heard a couple classes about Mashiach. Have you? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Mm-hmm. You all know that there are two Mashiachs. What are they called? Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef. That's what the Midrash means. That means that the battle of Yehudah and Yosef is not only in situ in that moment, it's something that would last forever. Ad Sheba Mashiach, meaning down to the actual coming of the Mashiach. There's still a Yehudah-Yosef rivalry. And what are they fighting for, says the Midrash? They're fighting over Binyamin. Now, if you look at it on a simple level, you think, okay, that's what the story is about. Yehudah is like, I need to take Binyamin. Yosef is like, no, Binyamin is staying with me. But they're really saying something much deeper. You know, the portion of Yehudah has, I don't know, what's the image we said earlier? What is he represented by? A lion. If you've ever been to Yerushalayim, you'll notice everywhere you go, there's flags with an image of a lion. Why is there a lion in Jerusalem? Because when they divided up Israel, whose portion was Jerusalem? Yehudah. That's why it's a lion, because that's his territory. It's amazing. You suddenly realize all these things fitting together. But even though Yerushalayim belonged to Yehudah, the Bet HaMikdash, you know whose portion it was in? Binyamin. Yehudah and Yosef are fighting over Binyamin. They're not only fighting over Binyamin, they're fighting over the Bet HaMikdash, the heart of the Jewish people. They're fighting over the service of God. That means that the nature of Yehudah is one approach in the service of God, and the nature of Yosef is the other approach in the service of God, and each one is constantly at war, trying to take over what it means to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And suddenly, we are starting to taste a little bit of how profound this moment was in the history of the world. Because effectively, the war of Yehudah and Yosef is not only then, it's now. It's not only between different types of people, it's also between you and you. The Zohar tells us that once upon a time, Am Yisrael was made up of many different, very clear nefashot. You had a person like Avraham. What does he stand for? Kindness. A person like Yitzchak. What does he stand for? Gvura. Yaakov, Emet. They were who they were. Why are we so complex today? Says the Arizal something unbelievable. He says, because there are no new souls in our world. Every neshama, every soul that comes down to this world is a soul that's been here before. Often, many times before. And that's why when you're confused or conflicted, it's not just that logically you're not sure, should I do this? Should I do that? It's that there's parts of you that feel most comfortable with one element, and parts of you, there's a part of you that's Yehudah, and there's a part of you that's Yosef. So there's a war going on here. A lion is very powerful. But its power, where is its power? In physical fight. Where is the power of a shor? An ox is very powerful. While a lion's power is very minute, it comes up in rare circumstances, the power of an ox is on display every single day. It works hard the whole live long day. It doesn't eat, it doesn't tear, it doesn't have teeth, fangs, claws. Its power is internal. That's the difference between the power of Yehudah and the power of Yosef. Isn't that interesting? And effectively, what we're starting to see is something that I'd like to share with you, I think, as a message for today, for this organization, for our world. When we think of a lion, when we think of strength, what do we think of? We think of people doing great acts. We think of our Israeli soldiers fighting in Gaza. By the way, what do you need to be Gevurah in the IDF today? Nothing. If you just don't run away, that's Gevurah, right? Isn't it? I mean, you wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to go and I'm going to die. And you don't run the other way. That's it. That's pretty, right? You just turn up to work, activated, Gevurah. But my friends, it is a fallacy that we don't live with Yehudah moments. It is a fallacy that to be kind, that to be gentle is something that is the opposite of Gevurah. And I want to read you the words of the Midrash. The Midrash tells us that when Yehudah approached Yosef, he approached him, and what does this word Vayigash mean? The first opinion, says Rabbi Yehudah, Amar Hagasha leMilchama. It means that you approached for Milchama, for war. That's the simplest version of strength. The simplest element of strength is what? Is when you attack something, when you stand up for something. I was asking the other day a fascinating thing. Again, I don't know if it's worthwhile, but maybe you'll find it interesting because I did. Why is it that hate gets so much more adherence than love? Why is it that the hatred that's on the streets of New York City, of Paris, of London, all around the world, why are they better at convincing them than we are? How come? I'm not talking about someone who's Muslim, who's part of the gang. Some rando, white bread, non-Jewish kid in some Ivy League school. I stopped calling them Ivy League, I call them Poison Ivy now. Don't send your kid. You're not doing them any favors. Don't send your kid. And if you think that getting a kid into an Ivy League university is going to be their best chance of success, I suggest you read Malcolm Gladwell, who has many, many, many statistical analysis that prove exactly the opposite, that being the best in their class in another kind of university where they're not afraid, where they're not traumatized, where they're not scared to even walk down the block in the Hillel or whatever, your child will be 1,000 times better off. Poison ivy. That's how you think about it. Till it changes, then we'll have another conversation. But right now, how does that happen? And the answer is very simple. You know where hatred comes from? Hatred comes from fear. You hate what you're afraid of. And fear is the deepest feeling that a human being can feel. Deeper than love. Do you understand that? You know how I can prove it? You ever have someone who, is afraid to get their heart broken so they don't get involved or they don't commit? What does that tell you? What's stronger, fear or love? Fear. Why is fear stronger? Because in a human level, the deepest sense of a human being, underneath every layer, underneath even their logic, is what? Is the desire for self-preservation. Fear was designed to help people protect themselves. So if hatred comes from fear, that's hardwired deeper than love. We need love too. We need connection too. The Torah says, "Ichavruta imituta." If we have no connection, we have no living. But that's something that we understand. Fear is something that it's so much deeper than that. It comes from such a much deeper place. So my friends, the first element of strength is reacting to fear, getting into battle. That's the most obvious element of Yehudah that flows in our veins. But my friends, the second opinion is that he was not approaching the milchama. He was approaching hagasha lepiyus. He came forward to appease. You hear the language of Yehudah. Please, my master, your servant, I'm a better chadam, right? Whatever, right? It's great, amazing. He's appeasing. The third opinion in the Midrash says Rabbanan Amri, Hagasha Letfilah. He approached in prayer. Who was he talking to this whole time? Not Yosef. He was talking to Hashem. Similar to the way Esther talks to Achashverosh, but who's she actually talking to? Hashem. Okay? So three opinions over here. Either he was speaking, he approached in prayer, he approached in war, he approached in appeasement, but then there's a fourth opinion in the Midrash. And that's the opinion I want to stick with today, with all of you. You know what the fourth opinion says? Let me hit pause for 1 second before I reveal the fourth opinion behind door number 4. Approaching for war, that's a lion. Approaching for peace as a lion. This Yehudah saying, take me on his knees, take me as a slave, that's a lion. Where's the lion in that? Praying to God is a lion? And the answer is that we have our heads on backwards. I want to read you something that was in the news only yesterday. I read it. I was crying. I'm going to read you the words of a woman. Her name is Iris Haim. She was the mother of Yotam, who was shot. We now know that they came out with no shirts on. They came out waving white flags. We know that they spray painted 3 chatufim, help in Hebrew, on the side of the wall. We know that the dog that had the camera on its back that got shot in that space, we know that it captured their cries. We know that after surviving 70 days, they were running towards the Israeli soldiers. It's like in the movies. Da, 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 slow-mo! And an Israeli soldier shot him. And he died. And I want you to hear what she says. This is Iris Haim. I'm Yotam's mother. I wanted to tell you, she says to the soldier, she sends this message to the brigade, 17th Battalion, to the soldier that killed her son. I wanted to tell you that I love you very much. And I hug you here from afar. I know that everything that happened is absolutely not your fault and nobody's fault except that of Hamas. May their name be wiped out and their memory erased from the earth. I want you to look after yourselves and to think all the time that you are doing the best thing in the world. The best thing that could happen, that could help us. Because all the people of Israel and all of us need you healthy, she said. And don't hesitate for a second if you see a terrorist, she urges. Don't think that you killed a hostage deliberately. You have to look after yourselves because only that way can you look after us. What a lion. What givurah, what strength in sensitivity. There was another man that has almost the same story as this. If you remember, when there was a shooting at the entrance to Jerusalem, and a young man jumped out of his car to go and engage the terrorists. And they didn't know. They just see a guy shooting, and they shot him. The parents said at the time they want a full investigation, and someone needs to pay for this mistake. God forbid, I'm blaming nobody. I just want to point out what a lion it takes to be able to see past your own sorrow and your own sadness and your own suffering, and to see what someone else is going through. That's a lion. Yudah is very strong. How many times have you been in a situation? Let me present a fake situation right now. Guy walks up to me in shul without any hesitation, slaps me across the face. I'll ask you, what do you think is easier? For me to hit him back or for me to keep my mouth shut?
Keep your mouth shut.
What's easier?
Easier to hit.
Much easier to hit. Instinctual to hit. The inner power it takes to keep your mouth shut. We don't associate power with silence. We don't associate power with vulnerability. We think people that are vulnerable are weak. I remember I used to take these students all the time to go to Poland when I was living in England for 13 years. Many of the students over there were profoundly affected by what they saw. Many of them actually going on a journey of teshuvah. These were kids that had no connection to Judaism, going on a journey of teshuvah, coming all the way back. I was just in Israel now, where I saw one of these girls that I knew from back then in school. She's a high school kid, 12th grade, went on the trip with us. Very little connection to Judaism. She went on that trip. And you know where I saw her now? I saw her now when I went to Israel. And I had the chance to see my son-in-law go get his smicha from my rabbi in the same kollel where I became a rabbi. And that girl was there because she was married to one of the other boys in that kollel. And I remember asking these kids, I said, what was really profound? Everyone had something else that they said. I saw this, I saw the resilience of the Jewish people, and then someone said something to me which really stayed with me. And over the years, I started hearing it again, and again, and again, and again. She said, Rabbi, you know what the most powerful thing for me was? Watching you cry. You go to a children's grave, 800 kids. You go to a place where the worst things could have ever happened to human beings, and you're crying. And I heard this again and again and again. I've never seen my father cry. I've never seen my dad cry. I've never seen it. They were able to touch some things, to see something on a level that they'd never been able to see because, wow, this is that emotional. English people are a lot like Sephardic. English men are a lot like Sephardic men. There's an element of them which they're taught from the time that they're young that being strong means never breaking. It means never showing that something affected you, never showing that you're hurting. But in actual fact, the strength of a person comes and manifests itself in the fact that they're willing to go to a place where they're uncomfortable, to allow themselves to show or to allow others to see that there's a crack in the armor. Yehudah is so strong. You know what the hardest thing for Yehudah must have been in that moment? Is to ask Yosef to help him. Sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to get together a sentence that says, please help me. I need some help. I need to get help. I'm struggling. Bonei Olam does some amazing work. And part of it is about raising the funds necessary to be able to do the technical medical things that are required in order to be able to bring children into this world. But it's nothing without people being willing to come and ask for that help. And oftentimes, that is an incredibly difficult endeavor. One of the things we're learning from Yehudah is the strength that it takes to ask someone, your younger brother, Yosef, help me. He doesn't know even that that's who it is. But my father's going to die if I don't bring him back. Please, I'll give myself up. Ladies, I want to share with you the fourth pshat in the Midrash. The fourth opinion in the Midrash says as follows. It says, Rabbi Elazar says, you know what Vayigash means? And he approached. Pashat libo. He stretched out his heart. Im limilchama aniba. I'm either coming for war, im lipius, or I'm coming for appeasement. im l'tfilah, or I'm coming to pray. You know what this last opinion is in the Midrash? All the above. Remember that? Multiple choice. D. All of the above. The last opinion is that Yudah came forward and said, I don't know what I need to give, but this is my heart. Here, take it. Pashat libo. Wow, what a language. That was the strength. That was the awakening of this lion. You know, a lot of times we think that strength comes in the form of doing. We've talked about strength coming in the form of not doing. You ever see someone so angry, they're holding themselves back and they're shaking? You know what that's like? I don't know if you go to the gym. I don't know if that's a terrible thing to say to someone. Do you go to the gym? But, right, if you've ever been to the gym and you see someone who's struggling with an amount of weight that they can't lift, you know what their arms look like? Their body does that. When you're struggling beyond your capabilities, you start shaking. So strength can be doing, strength can be not doing. But the last opinion is saying that sometimes the strength is not doing or not doing, pushing yourself to do versus pushing yourself not to do, not responding to your mother or mother-in-law, your sister or brother-in-law, not saying you don't understand. Oh, wow. Mechila. I just remembered, I was in a program once, and it was a Pesach program, and there was a fight in the family. And what was the fight over? The fight was over where they should go. And one of the families said, I think we should go this place. The other family said, well, I would rather go here. And other families start fighting. Well, you get what you want. Well, other families said, well, they had 3 kids. We have 3 kids. It's much more difficult if we go on that program for the kids. There's not a plate. Da, 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 da. And the other families what they want. Meanwhile, the one with the 3 kids, they don't know that the couple that don't have kids is not because they chose to wait. It's because they couldn't have. And this family is arguing. I'm remembering it now. Like you don't understand. Why can't you be sensitive? You don't have kids. You don't know how hard it is with the 3 kids to get them here to there to there to there. And I'm listening, and I'm the rabbi, and I know. And I'm like dying inside. Not your secret to tell. But sometimes the lion, the gevurah, is not in doing or not doing. It's in making a choice and a decision. Yehudah makes a decision, and the decision is the source of his strength. What is Yehudah saying? There's something that is important enough to me that I don't care about what the plan is. Plan A, war. Plan B, appeasement. Plan C, prayer. I'll do what I need to do because what's on the table is so important that whatever I have to do, that's the red line. Yudah says that having Binyamin in my possession, taking him home to my father, that's what I need to do. Whatever has to happen for that to happen is what we'll do. Bonei Olam is an amazing resource, but not everybody knows about it. Not everyone is courageous enough to take the step. Lots of people are still stuck in a place where they think, what, I'll just keep trying, I'll just do. Sometimes something as simple as saying to someone who's very close, if you're not close, they might not appreciate it at all. Is everything okay? I'm here in case you want to talk about it. I have some connections. What helps us do things more than hearing someone say, I know a guy who knows a guy? Opening that door, it could be the greatest thing that you ever did. My friends, Am Yisrael is taught in the Torah that there are many mitzvot. But sometimes we relate to these mitzvot like things that need to be done. And I always like to say that Judaism is like an iceberg. An iceberg has 10% of the bit that you see is above the water, but 90% is beneath the surface. When God gave us the Torah, He gave us many mitzvot, but those are only 10%. 90% is the work that goes on underneath the surface. Where is your heart? Where is your eyes? How sensitive are you? How strong are you when you know that something might be sensitive? They tell a story about the Chazon Ish, who was walking down the street once with a student. And they're walking, and all of a sudden the rabbi slows down. Guy feels bad. The rabbi's old. Is everything okay, Rabbi? Should we get a cab? I'll take you. Maybe you'll walk. You'll lean on me. The rabbi said, no, everything's fine. He's walking slowly. Eventually the rabbi, he says to the rabbi, he goes, I know that the rabbi was rushing to get to the shiur on time. I see that your rabbi's walking slow. The rabbi starts laughing. He says, no, it's fine, it's fine. Finally, they get to the yeshiva, and the rabbi says to this boy, he says, you know why I started walking slower? Why? He says, I don't know if you noticed, about 30 feet in front of us was an elderly man who was walking with a walker. He's from the community. He never had to walk with a walker before. Unfortunately, something happened. Maybe he fractured his hip. The guy's walking like this, okay? And I noticed, says the rabbi, that everybody's walking right past him. And every time someone would walk past him, I saw the guy go like this. I didn't want to be the one that would cause him the pain to see someone walking faster than him. What givurah is that? To even notice, never mind to act on it. Do you think that way? Do you look at people that way? Do you wonder what they're going through? Do you think maybe there's a reason? Especially with people in families. It happens all the time to us where, this is they never behave this way. All of a sudden they're acting crazy. Maybe there's a reason why they're acting crazy. Did you ask yourself? They never behave like this. So why won't you judge them favorably? Had a guy in shul start screaming at a guy who's sitting in his seat. He's like, I sit here every day. Well, you think you could come here once, twice a year and sit, last time I saw Yom Kippur, you think you just walk in there? I'm like sitting there, I'm like this, the guy's here because his mother passed away, say Kaddish. There's yelling about the chair. Of course, now he knows. Oh, no, sorry, of course. Too late now. When people act in a way, ask yourself, bring that gevurah. I know you're upset, and it's going to take something to overcome it. But you have that Yudah. It's there if you could access it. Yotam's mother, listen to what she's saying. She's hurting in a way that, God forbid, none of us should ever know. But whose heart is she thinking about? She's thinking about this soldier who was in an impossible position. People running all the tricks that Hamas is playing. She knows this kid will never forgive himself. So she feels his heart. My friends, for this to work in our community, we need people to be involved. We need liaisons, but we need people on the ground. We need volunteers. We need people who understand it, people who are supporting it, people who are thinking about it, people who are thinking about the people who are suffering in this way, who need that extra help, who need that extra hand. If you could be that person, what a beracha you would bring. I want to end with one last idea that I think is so relevant in today's climate. And to understand it, I'm going to just share with you the words of the Sfat Emet. The Sfat Emet writes something that is mind-blowing. He says that if you notice, Yehudah, he came to, He came to Yosef and he tells him the story. But the story is exactly the same as it's been the whole time. Can I point out something even more wild? I don't know if you ever noticed this. First Yehudah says, you know something? We'll all be slaves to you. What does Yosef say? No. Now Yudah, he's like, let me approach the bench. He's like, listen, really, I'll be your slave. Well, if I said no to 11 for one, am I not going to say no to 1 for 1? Is that not a bomb question? Says the Sfat, yes, you with me on the question? I don't know. Okay, yes. Says the Sfat Emet, Yudah lo chidesh davar. He didn't introduce anything new here. So how did he convince Yosef? To the point that suddenly Yosef, lo yachol Yosef leitapek. Yosef, at this point, he can't hold himself back. What did Yudah say that was so persuasive? Says the Sfat Emet, Ki im birer amitat ha'inyan. Yehudah finally clarified the truth of the situation. Ve'az ba'alo ha'yeshua. He was being truthful with the situation. And what does that mean? That he was being truthful. What does it mean that being truthful with the situation brings a person Yeshua? He says that Yehudah knew that all this time he was fighting for whom? For himself. He promised if he doesn't bring it back, he's going to pay a huge price. But suddenly, says the Sfat Emet, but through that, realizing that his number one concern was Benjamin, realizing that in our conversations with our children, when we're trying to do things for our kids, sometimes we wind up acting against them because there's a little bit of ego involved there. Once the truth is revealed, suddenly all the gates open. Someone asked me once, Rabbi, I don't understand. You're a rabbi in the city. It must be very difficult. You're living over here and you're very religious. It's hard enough. But all your kids' friends are all religious kids. That's all they see all the time. You're living in the city with religious kids. How do you deal with that? It's hard. They argue. They feel like they don't want to listen to you. They feel like you're imposing things on them only because you're a rabbi. I didn't ask to be a rabbi's kid. How do you make the right decisions? And I said, you know what? It's interesting. It's not actually all that important as a parent to make the right decisions. Because no one's going to get all the decisions right. You know what's much more important? Just that the kid knows that the decision is coming from a place of love. And a lot of parents think that their kids know that. No, my kid knows that. Reminds me of that joke. You know that joke with the guy? Guy gets up, you know, he gets up one morning, his wife says, I can't deal with this anymore. This is horrible. This is ridiculous. We need to go to therapy, otherwise the marriage is never gonna survive. I can't believe what in the world. His wife was Majnun. Last night everything was fine. What happened? They go to the therapist. The therapist says, what's the problem? And the woman says, my husband, I'm married to a man, doesn't love me. He said, what? If I didn't love you, I would have left a long time ago. Are you crazy? Right? She's arguing. She says, you know what? He never says I love you. The last time he said I love you, we were under the chuppah. The husband says, listen, I tell you I love you. Something changes, I let you know. From then, I have to tell you all the time. Yeah, you have to tell him all the time. And by the way, you know what's interesting? As a parent, at a certain point, you ever tell your kids to do their homework and they didn't hear you? But not like Sketch didn't hear you. Actually didn't hear you. At a certain point, by the way, scientific data for this, the sound of a naggy mother's voice, this is actual scientific data. The kid cannot hear the words that you're saying. Do you know that? Wild. Makes you judge your kids favorably. Like, oh, he actually didn't. You didn't hear me? No, he didn't hear you. Isn't that interesting? You know what's crazy? Telling your kid, I love you, 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 I love you. What happens eventually? They don't hear that either. So what do? You show. And when you show them that way again and again, what happens? They don't see that anymore as a proof. They get used to it. So you have to figure out another way. It doesn't mean more. It just means different. What Yehudah illustrated was, my heart is here. This is the most important thing in the world for me. The minute Yehudah was able to show that, to feel that inside of himself, Yosef heard that, felt that. And suddenly Yosef breaks down. Nothing new needs to be introduced in the conversation. You don't need to get it right anymore. The person can feel that your heart is really there. So people are so nervous about saying it in the right way, saying the right words. The right words are not as important as the person feeling that your heart is in the right place. But that takes a lot of strength, discipline, and practice. Hashem should bless us all to awaken the Yehudah inside of us, to allow us to find a strength inside of our bones, not just to do, but sometimes to not do, not just to say, sometimes to not say, but most of all, to make in our minds decisions of strength that say, on this, no matter what it costs me. Shalom in this family, it's not negotiable. It doesn't make a difference what I have to give up, what I have to swallow. Shalom is coming home. That's why the pasuk says, Adonai oz la'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. God gives his nation strength. Hashem blesses us with peace. Does peace require strength? Oh, yes, it does. If you ever had to make shalom with someone, you know how much strength that took. Hashem should bless us that with that koach, with that strength, we break through to the people we're trying to be able to help. We allow people who need that element of sensitivity. We see it, we recognize it. If our main intent is their heart, is their benefit, it doesn't matter. We'll figure out a way to be able to get the job done. Ask not, says the Kutzker, if something is necessary, ask. If something is possible, ask only if it is necessary. If it's necessary, you'll figure it out. Im l'tfilah, im l'milchama, im l'piyus. May God bless us in every one of our red lines, in every one of the things that we feel is so important to be successful by caring enough, by being willing enough, by being strong enough to bring that product home. We want to say thank you again to our hosts for everything like this. You invited everyone in. You set a beautiful table. The flowers are brightening up a day. It's a very special way. The cause itself is the most beautiful cause in the world. And Be'ezrat Hashem will be zochet that from this meeting we'll be zochet to see many, 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 many happy things come in the fullness of time. Baruch Hanai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.